We were just in Paris. We are now shifting to Los Angeles with Justin. Justin Young, as I mentioned in the last section, Justin is product owner of our integrations team. He's going to share a lot of what we've been talking about this morning, how you integrate our Nexus products with everything out there in your CI/CD pipeline, DevOps pipeline. We've seen how Fannie Mae has integrated a whole bunch of different things together in their pipeline, and what Mohammed just demoed live for us, which was super cool. Justin, without further ado, I'm going to let you take this away and show us what you have. So I can hear you. Let's get your slides up to make sure we can see them.
Sure. All right. Good morning from the West Coast. There's not enough coffee in the world right now, right? All right. So from the source, I want to talk about integrations today. This is also going to be demo heavy. So let's get going. As Derek said, I'm Justin Young. I run the integrations group at Sonatype. I've been here for quite a long time, but about 2 years ago, I was asked to start the integrations team, and we've been doing it since then. Our goal has really been to try to push the utility of the Nexus platform out to the people who use it. The Nexus Repository Manager and Nexus IQ Server are, they're the workhorses. They're doing all the heavy lifting, and they're the brains behind the operations. But when users come to get value from Sonatype, it's generally through the integrations. It's through your CI/CD pipeline, through your IDEs, or even further left into your issue tracking systems. So today, I'd like to kind of talk about that vision and how I've seen it so far, how other people have seen it, and then we'll jump into a demo of what it looks like. So if I go to the right window, here we go. This is like the 30,000-foot view down onto what we do. It showed up on our corporate website. It's beautiful. It's 3D animation, and it would kind of make what Eric from the Phoenix Project happy. It's a well-running machine. It's a well-oiled factory. We got components that are coming from the left here in the brain, getting pushed through all the Sonatype tooling and then going out to the cloud. This does a good job of showing how we integrate, what we integrate with, but it doesn't really show our place in the pipeline. It's very Sonatype-centric, as you would expect. So here's kind of the product view. This is something we threw together when we were trying to figure out pipelines. It's more two-dimensional and probably equally as confusing. But you can see on the left, we have a Silicon Valley reference to a Pied Piper writing some code, pushing it to some source control, and then it gets put into this pipeline. And the pipeline has warehouses, and it has some leaves, and things go out to repository, things go out to IQ. They still end up in the cloud. But this is probably, as I said, equally as confusing to someone. It would make sense internally when we kind of distribute it and talk about it. But in a demo, it's kind of hard to describe what this is and what it's doing. So let's get to the demo. Let's talk about actually how a developer uses Nexus tools to deliver code. And as a caveat, I haven't actually made this all the way through without something crashing. So every good presentation needs some memes, and we'll see how we do. So let's get started. Now, the story I'm telling here is from a developer's point of view. I'm an engineer who's walking into the office on, let's say, Monday morning, considering how much coffee I'm drinking. And I have 2 work items on my Kanban board. These are going to be 2 things I'd like to talk about. One is the lifecycle story. It's how lifecycle can help you remediate vulnerabilities quickly, how it pushes things left. And the second is the component pipeline story. How to use Nexus Repository to deliver private components, to upgrade, to host your artifacts, to host your containers and images and push them out. So in true Kanban fashion, I'll start from the top. Most important, my product owner prioritized this for me, so I better get to it. This is an automated ticket that Nexus Lifecycle created for me in JIRA. When Lifecycle notices new violations, you can set up notifications to push those violations or information about them to your JIRA. This really streamlines the work process and the workflow, and it gets the information to your developers as quick as possible, or in this case, to me. Here I can see there's a new violation with Spring Core in 5.0.4 release, which I'm using. And typically, from my point of view, I would go to the report and take a look. Let's digest this for a second. So if I bring up the component history here, or timeline, I can see that there's a new version, 5.0.5, that seems to be vulnerable without any vulnerabilities. So this may be fairly easy. As a developer, put my smile on, happy about it. And I could just upgrade, but because I want to have a holistic understanding of what I'm doing here, I probably should also investigate what the vulnerability is. Why is it affecting me? So Sonatype provides this information. This is a vulnerability that was put into the National Vulnerability Database. And then we have some information straight from the CVE. The CVE here says that if I support multi-part requests to my server, and I, let's see, proxy them to another server, I could be exposed to an attack. Now, right away, I know I'm not doing this. So I could either make the fix or I could mark it non-applicable. But let's find out a little more. And you can see that there's additional value and information that Sonatype provides in this panel. Here we're pulling information from the pivotal disclosure that says not only do I have to be proxying these requests, the boundary value chosen by server A has to be known by the attacker. So they have to have access to my logs through a separate attack vector. So this is, although it has a high security CVSS score because of the result and what could be exploited, it really is not applicable to me and very difficult to exploit. Now that's a lot of caveats to say, let's still fix it, because in my mind and my recommendation to my manager and my product owner is that the fix is so easy that it outweighs overriding the vulnerability. So I'll jump over to my IDE, and I went straight to the report. My guess is, as a developer, I'd probably go to my IDE. I spend a lot of time nowadays as a product owner kind of looking at the materials in my applications and understanding how they're composed. As a developer, I'd probably just jump in here. It gives me the same details. I can get going. I can get working. So as promised, there's a version bump available, and it's 5.05. So fairly easily, I can do my remediation. I'm going to jump in here, and this may be the cheating way to do it, but let's just force the 5.0.5.release. Import my changes, and I'm going to rerun the evaluation in my IDE. This allows me to ensure that the changes work, that I didn't introduce any transitive dependencies that that I could be vulnerable to. And then also, I'm going to run Maven. When I do bump, it was a minor or a patch release, so it wasn't a big change to the library, but I could be breaking something that I'm working on. It is an API change at the end. It shouldn't be breaking, but there's something that changed in the library that I was consuming. On this side, we can see that we're all good. Evaluation is complete. There's 42, and there's not a single policy violation, so that's fantastic. Maven reports success. I should be good to go. So that was fairly easy to get done. I think that maybe it's a trivial example, and we can say that I picked it for the demo, because I did. But open source projects are really good at hygiene, at keeping themselves up to date, at responding to CVEs, responding to vulnerabilities. Their turnaround's usually quick, and there's often patch releases or other versions available without the vulnerability. So I think that while this is a contrived example that I put in. It could be a real world scenario. So a little stuttering here because Git is laggy on me. I'm trying to push this up to GitLab and had problems earlier. We'll see where we end up, and we may have to go back to slides. So everything's getting deployed here to a to Minikube that's running locally on my computer. And I have probably not given GitLab enough love. Seems to be rebooting for some reason. So we'll wait while it reboots, and I'm going to jump back into some slides and talk about some other things that the integrations team has done. Yeah, so the meme held true. All right, so pretty soon we're going to get over to Jenkins, and we're going to talk about automating pipelines. A big thing we focused on is being able to have configuration as code, so to have scripted and declarative pipeline support in Jenkins. This allows you to be sure that when you run the job, it's going to be the same every single time. When servers go down or need to be rebuilt, like we can see with GitLab right now, we need to we get the same results time after time. This is really important. In a Kubernetes cluster, everything's pretty resilient. My 0.5 CPU I gave GitLab wasn't enough, so it went down, but it's coming back up, and it's going to have the same persistent volume. It's going to be able to recreate everything that I had there before. Having your configuration as code enables that. So what it also lets you do, and is it allows you to take the result of policy evaluations and let the robots do some work with it. So in scripted pipelines, you're able to assign a variable to the result. Here you have the evaluation results in the code, groovy code on the top. And what I can do with that is I can digest whether the lifecycle analysis is passed, what went wrong with it, and push it out to the tools of my choice. So on the bottom here, we see a screenshot from GitHub where the Nexus lifecycle analysis is passed. We talked earlier about developers being in the IDE and wanting to spending their time in the IDE, trying to digest information in the IDE. I want to be in the tool of my choice if I'm a developer. And often my source control, GitHub in this case, is the tool of my choice. This is where I'm doing my reviews. This is where I'm figuring out whether code is go or no go. And having the ability to understand what CI reports back to the IDE is, or sorry, to your source control platform is very important. So not only do I know that the build passed, I know that Nexus lifecycle analysis is passed. I give it 2 thumbs up. Well, 1. I'm only allowed 1. And maybe the code gets merged to master. All right. So this looks good. Let's see if we can push. All right, we got our code up there. Now I am going to go back. Let's see. Actually, I'm going to go back to JIRA here. And that got done even with a big hiccup in, I don't know, about 10 minutes. It was done so quickly I forgot to move my ticket into development. So I'm sure that my product owner is going to yell at me about that. So I won't make the same mistake with the second. Make Miramar service fly. This is my second work item for the day. The Maverick team, in case you didn't know, I went with a Top Gun theme for this demo. I don't know actually if I know that much about the movie, but you have to pick something. So Top Gun was it. The Maverick team just released a new util to make the Miramar service fly. Grab the latest library and make this thing fly. So I'm going to put this in progress as well. And I'm going to open up an XRM. All right, so here's my repository manager. And I know that the Maverick team has released something. I'm going to come over here and take a look at what's been deployed to my releases. So I have a couple of versions of the Maverick library. My versions include the date in them. This is just kind of how we do things on the integrations team. They allow you to push a lot of versions, a lot of patches throughout the day. We chose this because we wanted to get everything to production into our users' hands as quick as possible. And ordering by patching by version lets the CI determine determine the version and take that out of the human's hands. So I have a new version of this library. I'm going to include it. It's supposedly going to make my application fly. I think it was called Maverick Library. The version is here. And then lastly, the group was another Top Gun thing. All right. I have my local Maven settings pointed to this Nexus repository that I have running in my Kubernetes, my Minikube, as I have all my CI and everything. So you can see here that I included the new dependency, it got brought down, and we're good to go. So this was lacking a lot of documentation. So luckily, I know what I'm doing here, and this is about what the code I need to write. I went over to my friends over in Maverick, and I said, hey, I got this ticket. It doesn't say anything. How do I make this fly? And they said, we had this static library, the static util that we threw out there. That's how you do it. So I've done the change. I'm going to run Maven again, because in a real world, I'd have a bunch of tests. I thought about doing some tests in the demo. I didn't. I will be forever shamed for that. So I made the change. I'm going to commit this as well. And I'm going to push this out to master. I was able to use Nexus here to host my bits, to host my private libraries, to pull them in, to look up the version, to understand what the newest one is. And then also, we'll see pretty soon when we go through Jenkins, it's hosting the Docker images. So everything that you see running on my computer right now on Kubernetes was pulled through Nexus repository. So if we jump over to the dashboard, you can see that I'm running my whole pipeline here. I have a GitLab Jenkins IQ repository manager. The Jenkins I'm using is a custom Jenkins I built. I threw Docker on it in order to communicate with the host and do all the builds. And if we go over in the repository manager and look at my Docker host hosted, you can see here it is. So this whole thing was bootstrapped with Nexus. I started up Kubernetes, I installed Nexus on, deployed Nexus onto Kubernetes, and then from there, I deployed everything else through Nexus Repository Manager. This allows me to understand what's getting thrown to my Kubernetes cluster. It allows me to have control over it. It also allows me to ensure uptime because I have all my images locally stored. This is very quick, right? The Kubernetes cluster itself has all the images it needs to run on it. So that's pretty cool. All right. So we made something fly. What have I not covered? What I didn't cover is what it looked like before it was fly. So let's take a little look at what we had going here. It's a Spring Boot app, as we probably should know from the vulnerability remediation we did. Hello world. This is very complex. And we made a change. So I would like to go over and look at Jenkins. All right, so Jenkins is going to open up here. We can see I have a service job and a deploy job, and I'm going to kick the service off. My policy violation is reported in here. I haven't run a build since I remediated that. So the hope here is that's going to go away. I just added the fly utility, so I should get that. Both these changes should be in this single build. And that's about it. In the perfect world, I probably should have let CI run in between each change, but we're doing this in a demo, and that's what we get. So I want to look at the pipeline for a second while this runs. If I can bring it up, I have it somewhere over here. All right. So if I can make this a little bigger. As promised, the Docker agent, the image that's building this is all being pulled from my private repository here. And I'm doing some Maven to build it. I'm running a policy evaluation. We talked previously that you can do policy evaluations in declarative and scripted pipelines. Here's we're in declarative, and we run it against Miramar service. Very recently, the IQ team has added some features to allow you to provision your Jenkins server such that the IQ application doesn't even have to exist. So if you have a bunch of new jobs that you're trying to build out, you can use Jenkins to provision the jobs on IQ server. I mean, that's really cool. And helps everyone get started really quickly. I released this, so this is really important. I'm pushing the jar here up to Nexus. So I have my Spring Boot app, it gets bundled all together, I build a jar, that goes up to the repository manager. And that's it, that's all I'm doing here. I have built my Java library, or sorry, my Java application. I pushed it up to Nexus, and then this particular job is done. I'm going to kick off the deploy. Now, if we jump over to the deploy, we can see, once again, using that private image, the deploy here is going to do a Docker build. It's going to do a policy evaluation on the Docker build. Now, why do I have two? I have one for my development, one for the jar itself, and then one for what's going into production. The production is my Docker image. It may have a little more than just what the application has, because it's going to have all the libraries that got brought in with the image itself. I'm using OpenJDK, so I'm going to have a lot of other libraries that get analyzed in my production build. At the end of the day, my production build is really what I want to use to do continuous monitoring and to understand what's living out on my production servers. And then finally, I push that Docker image back up to repository manager here. 31, yeah, and then that's it. That's my deploy. A little about the Docker file. I'm here pulling down my my jar from Nexus. So instead of letting Jenkins pass around all these artifacts and use Jenkins to do the handoff, I want to be sure that Nexus repository has my my final version, my authoritative source of what this library is, or this application, sorry, again. So I've pushed the application up to Nexus repository, it's been released, and then I'm asking Docker, go out there and grab that down. Make sure that whatever is in Nexus repository is the version that is running in production. So I pull it down, and then I run it. Let's see how this is going. We are stuck on our build. So strike 2 for the day. Generally, I will have to restart Jenkins, but we will see. Now, looks like we're going, albeit very slow. But I can talk around it. And while this is working, what do we want to do? Let's go back and talk about other things that we've done. So native Docker scanning, we just talked about that. You want to be able to understand what the contents of your containers are when they are in production. So the Nexus lifecycle, the CLI, the Jenkins plugin, all the interaction points we have for lifecycle will now open up a image and scan its contents. And that allows you just a complete picture of what's running on your production systems. We have Docker Hub offerings. That's what you're seeing running right now. They got pulled into Minikube. We have offering on Red Hat Container Catalog for Nexus Repository Manager. So if you're a RHEL user and you want to get a RHEL version of Nexus Repository Manager, that's on Red Hat Container Catalog. That also is certified, which means that you get all the benefits that you usually get from Red Hat, fixes for any vulnerabilities on your operating system, any RPMs that need to be updated. They actually notify us immediately, and we rebuild that Docker image to reduce any vulnerabilities there. So that's pretty cool for Red Hat customers. We have some CloudFormation templates. We're in the DCOS universe. We have some chef cookbooks. So we've spent a little bit of time trying to give references and deployments to people who are using cloud platforms and would want to deploy Nexus Repository Manager or Nexus IQ Server. So also, in the last year, I think, Visual Studio. I've done everything here in Java and using IDEA, but we have a Visual Studio plugin. This is pretty awesome. If you're a NuGet developer, I actually started my career in .NET. I loved Visual Studio. I spent every single moment in there. It's really a kitchen sink of tools. So as a .NET developer, I spend a lot of time in Visual Studio. I need to have my policy evaluation there. If I'm choosing NuGet components, I want to make smart, informed choices using lifecycles information in my Visual Studio IDE. So very cool. You get NuGet packages, your bill of materials, everything else we've seen with the IDE extensions in Visual Studio. Last, I promised I'd be talking about our community. We've spent some time trying to document things, making reference architectures, talking about APIs and seeing how they fit our needs and how they'll fit other people's. So we've been growing those out, and we have a growing community of people who are providing extensions and plugins and other integrations to the tools of their choice. We try to hit the most strategic integrations at Sonatype. We try to get ones that can truly enable all developers and their pipelines, but there's always going to be off cases where you use a particular tool or you have some process that's not the same as everyone else, or the bespoke solution for your organization. And we suggest that you open source those, because if you think that you're the only one out there, it's generally not true. Other people are doing what you do. Please open source them. Please talk to our community. We have Exchange at sonatype.com. We have a Gitter for the Sonatype Nexus community, GitHub. So get involved, donate, and share the wealth of knowledge out there. That's going to help everyone. So I have about 3 minutes. We're going to see if we got fly or not. It looks like we are still building. Such is life, but we got pretty far through the demo without crashing. So, I'm pretty happy about that. Spoilers are that the make fly was a little airplane ASCII character that would go around our hello world here. It was amazing. People would have clapped and the audience would have gone wild, but we missed that. So to wrap it up, let's see. All the code or scripts I have out today. Let's see, wrong slide. All the scripts I have to deploy all this to Kubernetes, to automate the deployment of the policies and the applications, and pretty much everything you saw is available on my GitHub account, Justin, Nexus User Conference integrations. Very short README to hopefully get people started. This is hungry, as you can see, so I'll bump up the GitLab CPUs so we don't run into the same problem as we did at the very beginning of this, and I'll push that soon. And that's about it. I'll be available on Slack. I work here, so I'm not going to go anywhere. And that's what I got for you today.
Excellent. Thanks, Justin. Let me turn down the volume on the other thing so we don't get the echo. Justin, like everyone, you ran through a whole lot in a little bit of time, so we appreciate you. One, running through all that. Two, running the gauntlet of a live demo online, which always makes things exciting. The certified RHEL containers, Chef cookbooks, Jenkins webhooks, Visual Studio integration, and more, as Justin talked about. I showed in the last segment how to get to our community integrations. You just go to sonatype.com. Under the resources tab, there's community integrations there, so you can see what others have done. And as Justin said, we would love anyone out there to watching to contribute to the community integrations that we have. Justin's going to be live in Slack, as he said. There's a bunch of conversations going on there, so we'll look forward to seeing him there.